Time bent silently, as if respecting something too ancient to be interrupted. When my paws touched the ground of precisely aligned bricks, I felt a strange absence. Not recent abandonment, ancient silence, ripened by time. I was in the Indus Valley, thousands of years before any classical empire, standing before a city that still breathed order, but no longer breathed people. Before me, wide streets crossed at perfect angles. Nothing there seemed improvised. Each wall, each canal, each step revealed careful planning. Mohenjo-daro didn't grow by chance. It was designed, organized, built by a collective mind that understood space, flow, and permanence. And yet, something fundamental had vanished: the human presence that gave meaning to the city. The air was dry, heavy with fine dust. There were no chaotic ruins, no obvious signs of violent destruction. Houses stood intact, doors open, objects left behind. The feeling wasn't of sudden collapse, but of gradual withdrawal. As if, at some point, someone had simply decided to leave, in silence without warning. I walked through inner courtyards, observed wells carefully excavated, stairs leading to floors now empty. Everything suggested an advanced urban life, functional, stable. This civilization knew comfort, hygiene, and organization long before many others that would still be celebrated by history. And yet, no one sang its names. No monumental temple rose above the houses. No palace dominated the horizon. There were no statues of kings, no inscriptions exalting conquests. That absence caught my attention. This was a society that didn't seem interested in immortalizing rulers, but in sustaining the collective. And perhaps that explains why its end was not marked by glory or spectacular tragedy. There, before silent streets and empty houses, I understood I was about to witness something rare in human history. Not the violent collapse of a civilization, but its emptying. A disappearance that left no heroes, villains, or final battles. Only questions. The Indus Valley held one of the greatest civilizations of the ancient world, flourishing around 2,600 years before Christ. Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, and other cities formed a vast urban network connected by trade, standardization, and impressive technical knowledge. Nothing there seemed primitive. Quite the opposite. It was a sophisticated system, quietly efficient. Houses followed similar patterns. Bricks had standardized measurements, uniformity that reveals quality control. Drainage systems carried used water away from cities with surprising efficiency. Domestic bathrooms existed in many residences. This society understood hygiene, infrastructure, and urban planning at a level that wouldn't be rediscovered for millennia elsewhere. I found no imposing defensive walls or arsenals of weapons. This suggested a society that didn't live under constant threat of war. Instead, I found warehouses, trade seals, standardized weights. Power seemed to reside in economic organization and cooperation, not in military force. Trade extended across long distances. Artifacts from the Indus Valley reached Mesopotamia. Foreign materials arrived here. It was a connected world long before the concept existed. A silent network of exchanges, sustained by trust, standard, and continuity. Nothing like this emerges without prolonged stability. And yet there were no clear records of kings, no narratives glorifying dynasties, no monuments proclaiming absolute rule. This doesn't mean absence of leadership, but suggests a form of organization less centralized. A civilization that functioned without needing to shout who was in charge. Perhaps this absence of dominant voices explains why, when the end approached, there were no dramatic proclamations, wars of resistance, or records of collapse. When no one writes their own glory, they also don't write their own fall. What intrigued me most wasn't what was there, but what wasn't. There were no massive cemeteries indicating devastating epidemics. No layers of ash suggesting widespread fires, No clear signs of large-scale foreign invasion. The city hadn't been destroyed, just emptied. Historians and archaeologists searched desperately for a simple explanation. We always seek clear endings, wars, conquests, sudden catastrophes. But the Indus Valley refuses to offer that narrative comfort. It didn't fall dramatically. It slowly dissolved. I found no long inscriptions explaining political decisions. The writing of the Indus Valley remains undeciphered to this day. Small seals, repeated symbols, short messages that reveal no founding myths, no clear historical records. The voice of this civilization was lost before we could understand it. Without texts, only material remnants remain, and the remnants tell a strange story. Continuity without abrupt collapse, change without visible violence. The cities were gradually abandoned. The population seems to have migrated, dispersed, adapted to something that left no spectacular marks. This troubles us because it challenges how we tell history. We prefer shock narratives. But here, silence dominates. A silence that doesn't scream defeat, but suggests choice, necessity, or adaptation. Something changed in the world around these cities. And they answered with movement, not with the sword. I walked those streets understanding that not every ending needs to be loud. Some civilizations don't die. They simply change form, spread out, and leave only questions behind. The Indus River was the backbone of this civilization. But rivers are not constant. They shift course, dry up, overflow. For contemporary researchers, evidence suggests that gradual climate changes altered the behavior of rivers that sustained those cities. Where there had been predictable water, uncertainty came. Some waterways dried slowly. Others became too unstable to sustain continuous agriculture. The monsoons that fed these rivers began to fail more frequently. For a civilization deeply organized around planning and predictability, this silent change would have been devastating. Without reliable water, the foundations of urban life begin to crumble. Crops fail, trade weakens, large cities become unsustainable. You don't need war to destroy an urban center. Just remove its practical reason to exist. Gradually, populations would have migrated to more fertile, more stable regions. Not as panicked refugees, but as people making rational decisions facing an environment that no longer offered security. The city wasn't taken. It was left behind. This transition probably took centuries, time enough that no one realized they were living the end of an era. When everything happens slowly, we rarely recognize the historical moment we're in. The Indus Valley wasn't defeated by enemies. It was reshaped by water, climate, and time. And facing this, its population chose to adapt, not fight forces greater than any wall. There are no names carved in stone here. No king remembered. No conqueror celebrated. This makes that civilization strangely invisible to the traditional history, which usually revolves around extraordinary individuals. The Indus Valley was extraordinary precisely because it didn't depend on them. This absence of individual prominence makes its disappearance even more silent. There was no fallen leader, no sacked capital. Just families leaving their homes, communities reorganizing, cities gradually losing function. The lack of monuments glorifying leaders doesn't mean absence of political structure. It just means that structure didn't seek eternity through propaganda. It was something more ephemeral, more practical, more invisible. I observed that world understanding that not all greatness seeks to be remembered. Some simply function, sustain lives, and move on without demanding eternal recognition. And when they disappear, they do so without asking for mourning. That idea is uncomfortable. We like to believe that everything great leaves deep marks, but the Indus Valley proves otherwise. A civilization can be advanced, stable, and influential, and still disappear with almost no narrative trace. There, among empty houses and silent streets, I realized that history doesn't always preserve what was best. It preserves only what shouted loudest. The disappearance of the Indus Valley generated no epic myths or sung tragedies. It generated silence, a silence that crossed millennia and reached me intact, defying simple interpretations. Perhaps this civilization understood something many others never understood. When the world changes, insisting on the old form can be more destructive than abandoning structures that no longer serve. I found no signs of desperate resistance. I found signs of gradual adaptation. People choosing to survive differently in other places, without needing to defend empty ruins of a past that wouldn't return. This kind of decision is rarely celebrated. It creates no monuments. It generates no commemorative dates. But it guarantees continuity of life, even if the original form of the civilization is lost. The Indus Valley may not have left famous kings, but it left a profound lesson. Sometimes, the greatest collective intelligence is knowing when to leave. And perhaps that's why its end wasn't violent, because there was no struggle against the inevitable, just silent acceptance that the world had changed. Much of what we know about this civilization is still fragment, disconnected pieces of a puzzle that may never be fully assembled. The writing remains silent. The exact reasons for migrations continue in debate among researchers. But that incompleteness is also part of its legacy. Not all history needs to be fully understood to be significant. Sometimes mystery preserves importance better than forced explanations. While other civilizations ought to be remembered, the Indus Valley seems to have moved on without that concern. And ironically, that's what makes it so fascinating now. I observed knowing that for many, this episode will be frustrating. There are no clear villains, no explosive climax, just a long, silent transition. But perhaps it's precisely this kind of story that comes closest to human reality. Not all endings are dramatic. Some simply happen, slowly, while we go on living. The silence of the Indus Valley isn't empty. It's dense with meaning. It speaks of adaptation, impermanence, and the fragility even of the most well-organized societies. I walked one last time through those aligned streets. The low sun cast long shadows, as if time wanted to underline every detail before erasing the scene. The cities of the Indus Valley weren't forgotten because they failed. They were forgotten because they left no narratives of power to be repeated. No celebratory texts, no monuments claiming superiority. Still, their influence persists quietly in the idea of planned city, of functional infrastructure, of organized collective life. Concepts that would shape future urban thought. They didn't seek to dominate the world, just to inhabit it stably, efficiently, justly. And perhaps that's harder to achieve than conquering territories. I left that place with the strange feeling of having witnessed not a fall, but a collective choice facing inevitable change. A farewell without drama, but with dignity. Some civilizations scream as they fall. Others simply walk away. The Indus Valley chose silence. If you want to keep traveling with me through stories that time almost erased, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Not all civilizations fall with a bang. Some just disappear. And it's in them that time whispers loudest. Until the next episode.